Hey, LS Church. This is our podcast where we sit down with Sunday speaker and recap their message with questions and conversation. This week's pod is on September 7th's message, Preparing for the Promised Land, with Pastor Rod Anderson. Let's check it out. What's up, church, and welcome to the Sunday Recap Podcast. My name is Caden. I'm here with Pastor Rod, and this is congratulations. This is episode 30.
I'm quite honored.
Yes. So this is episode 30. This is also our first non-pastor, Steph pastor to be on the kind of the new look set. So you feel more comfortable in these chairs a little bit better? Yeah, there we go.
Kind of nice.
That's the idea. Jake's been messing with a great job, Jake. The lighting looks really, really nice in here. It's great. So, Pastor Rod preached his message, and we've kind of been in this Promised Land series, and I talk to Pastor Steph every week, and she's like, it wasn't supposed to be a series. You know, it was supposed to be this one quick message, but there's so much fruit in it, you know, that everyone can get some good stuff out of it. So this message was preparing for the Promised Land. But before we get into the message, it's been a long time, probably a couple months since we sat down with you last.
Yeah.
How you been doing? Summer camp went through.
Summer camp's done.
Yep.
Now we're in Christmas train prep.
Yes. So always busy through those times too. But anyway, I heard you went to I'm trying to see if I can get the title of this right, a candlelight Hans Zimmer concert.
I did.
Yes.
With a Listet string quartet. It was in the Lone Star Flight Museum.
Yes.
So excellent venue.
Yes.
I got planes all around me while I'm listening to cool music.
Well,
I can't complain.
That'd be better.
But yes.
That's really cool. I saw that. I know you went on Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's cool. That's pretty cool weekend.
Yeah,
right
that was
there.
nice.
Mm-hmm,
yeah,
awesome.
I really enjoyed that. Yeah,
Yes, for
Hans
sure.
Zimmer's music is excellent.
Yes. So if you got, here's a little behind the camera is Jake, but right next to Jake is a record player. So every Friday, Pastor Rod brings us a record from his collection. We get to listen to it. We call it For the Record Friday, and what the Rod record is going to be that day. So we've had a lot of great records over a year for sure.
Over a year.
So that's basically every Friday. We took off the summer because
we did too much going on.
Yeah, too much going on. But yeah, so that's cool. So that's really awesome, and that's a fun way to lean into. You know, I feel like every time that if I ever have to do a message for anything, I can't do anything besides focus on that. So like going out to like being able to go to a cool event like that, like before. Like my question is, this is not on topic at all. My question is, are you thinking about the message at all, or whatever, how you're going to speak, or you're used to it by now?
No, it's popping in and out of my head all day long, no matter what's going on. Even if I'm working in the office here or things like that, it's always popping in and out of my head.
Yes,
so,
and everything is like it could be a story.
Yeah.
You know, when you're looking through this lens.
Oh yeah, you always look for things that you could maybe pull into what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. Always try to look for that.
Yeah, for sure. So I like what we were even having a meeting this week, and we were talking, and even Pastor Steph was like, she loves being able to, preach on a topic and then like have some of the other pastors be able to also preach on that topic, because there's so many different angles, from what that is. So for you, what do you think that is maybe maybe we can talk about some fruit that you feel like that you've really been able to get from this series, but also what's something, obviously your message, but what's something that you feel like you were able to add to what we've already been talking about?
I think as far as getting anything from the message, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. She said that when I preached on Sunday, that was the 8th message in this series.
Yeah.
So this is obviously longer than she thought it was going to be.
Right.
But just what she's been talking about from the time to leaving Egypt, we spent a lot of time talking about the wilderness, but the importance of growth in that season and how significant not only it was for the children of Israel, all of that's in the Bible for us to read so that we can draw parallels to ourselves, even if sometimes we say, no, we're not as dumb as the children of Israel were, but just a lot of learning to develop and growth, to grow through those hard times. I think that was good. Being able to see that. And then you were asking me something about my message.
Yeah, too. I was saying like, what you can get, but also what do you feel like you were able to like, as Pastor Rod's perspective, like being able to add to this piece of it?
Well, maybe just obviously I'm more of the senior one that's up there on the pulpit. Maybe just giving a different perspective of it, just because not just my total life experiences, but my amount of time here on the campus, and just being able to look at things a different way. Obviously, the cool thing about all the people that get up and preach, we all have different personalities. And so being able to share it from my side of it, I tend to be more of a teacher. So I'm kind of, whatever I put up there, I'm not so much preaching it. Lots of times I'm just teaching it.
Right.
And so that's, I guess, something different that I bring to it.
Yes. Your nickname is the Oak. If you endorse that nickname, who knows? But that is
no, I do not endorse that name.
But the nickname is pretty great. I would say is the Oak. And yeah, I feel like every single time when you get up and preach, like you said, every single one of our speakers has kind of a different. They have a different personality. And they have a different way that they see things, and also a different way that they share things. So you being more in this teacher lane also. It's funny the way that this goes. There's sometimes there's still mom and dad voices as well. One of the things I thought was funny that you kind of spoke, I would say, from a dad voice is God was asking us to take responsibility. Kind of at the beginning of your message, you were talking about those three things that we were going into, right? The responsibility, the conquest, and the governing, right? Those and I know you were talking about how we've on this journey, have been talking about what God is asking from us, because this promised land requires more from you. One of my favorite things you said was, God has more for you, right? But he also requires more from you, And so going into this season right now, for us and what it looks like, what does that look like for us as far as those three, responsibility, conquest, and governing? We can see how they need, and we can take this one at a time, maybe start with responsibility, but we can see how they need to start taking responsibility for the promised land, right? What does that look like for us? How can we take responsibility for going into this next season, leaving the wilderness in our daily lives?
So let's just say we're applying it to our promised land, whatever that looks like.
Right.
You're getting to the point where you're starting to receive that abundance that God has promised. The fulfillment of the promise is now taking place.
Right.
Well, it's not and I talked about this at one point in the message, after that, it's not just laying back and enjoying everything. It's yes, I've given you that. Now you need to have the responsibility of stewarding what I've given you. And I'm not just giving you that just for yourself. What are you going to do with it?
Right.
And I think that was... that obviously was a challenge for the children of Israel, because yes, they went in and they conquered and everything, but once the land was distributed, okay, now you're responsible for it. You've got to steward this land.
Right.
What are you going to do to take care of it?
Right.
And still follow me and obey me?
Right.
All of that is the responsibility that's put on them.
Right.
Wasn't as much responsibility in the wilderness because they were just wandering in the middle of nowhere. It's just basically you're trying to make it through day to day, and you're kind of getting past
just following.
And you're past that survivor mindset, and now you're into a whole new mindset.
Right. You talked about that survivor, and then almost going to warrior, right? And then almost you go from warrior, right, to then steady, stable, taking responsibility, taking that responsibility, living. I think governing was probably the best word, right? Responsibility, conquest, governing. So my question is, this is kind of like a chicken before the egg thing. What comes first? Is it important that we get a revelation on the idea of what God is giving us before he gives it to us, right? So this taking responsibility for the land, if I'm not mistaken, that idea was brought to them before they even entered the promised land.
It was brought to them before they even left Egypt.
Yeah. Okay, so why is that? Why is this idea of taking responsibility for the promised land, why does that need to get in our heads before we even leave Egypt?
I think it's because you need to know what you're stepping into.
Yeah.
And first of all, he wanted to give them that promise way back in Exodus. I believe it was Exodus 3 is that when that was first promised, that you're going to go into this land flowing with milk and honey. At that point, they needed it there as hope.
Right.
At the same time, you would hope that they started to realize, wait a minute, we're moving into this place, but now it's a place that we call our own.
Right.
So we have more responsibility. You think if you're living somewhere and it belongs to somebody else, you have a certain level of responsibility. Once you buy your own home, I always tell young people that when you're buying, it's congratulations, But now the responsibility really picks up because you're responsible for maintaining it, taking care of it, keeping it up, doing all those things. Same thing with them. Yes, I am going to take you out of this place of slavery.
Yeah.
And I'm taking you to a place of abundance. But this is now yours to steward for me.
Right.
And he was wanting them to be able to understand that even before they left.
Yeah, I really like that mentality. If we're talking Egypt, wilderness, promised land, right? It's like the mentality of slave, survivor, warrior, right? I think that's a big piece, even like that house analogy that you just said right there. Like, I think sometimes that we can think that the battle is the whole thing, right? Like, you get your mind and I mean, first of all, it's already hard getting your mindset to be thinking about, this conquest idea, right? But like, the living in the promised land afterwards, like, it's funny because you go, yeah, that should be an easy mindset, but like, you got to drop a lot of habits, and drop a lot of things. I don't want to get too ahead of us because I know that's more on the governing side of it, but like, this going into this conquest, this warrior mindset that they're going into, right? I mean, it's funny because, I don't know why. Listen, your history, right? So you know about this, but it makes me think too, like kind of like the American Revolution in the way that it's like what was the army built out of? Like, not soldiers, right?
Everyday citizens,
right? Everyday citizens, and then it's kind of the same thing, like with the children of Israel, right? Like, these people were just wanderers, really, right? Like, they were going through the wilderness. They left actually as slaves, right? And then now this generation, it's the second generation that's really being able to go into, and none of the same people that left Egypt are the same that are entering the promised land. That's a whole sermon in itself, right?
Yes, it is.
But this mindset shift, because what God's asking them to do is something that they're not even like trained for, equipped for, right? Like, in their minds, at least, as far as being this warrior. How does that look towards us? How can we see that as a part of our lives, and how can we glean from what the children of Israel learned in that mindset shift for us?
Well, he was obviously going to have to, because they were slaves. They didn't have to know how to fight,
right?
They just had to know how to work,
right,
to survive their masters, and so he had to train them to fight. But it was one of those things where, if you trust me, I'm going to train you and make you able to go in and possess what I've promised to you. And so it needs to be the same thing with us.
Right.
There's going to be times in our calling or our walk with God that he's going to ask us to do something that maybe we feel we're not capable of doing. But he's saying, if you trust me, I will make you able to do that. Yeah. And we've just got to be able to trust him in those circumstances that he's going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think, us being able to believe that the promised land is even like, ours, right? Believing that that's even a thing for us. We always talk about like, or me and when our pastor stuff, we talk about like, man, like our boy Moses, like he didn't get to go, and it's like that idea of like he doesn't get to go, but Joshua, and Caleb, they're able to step into this. And you talk about the spies, right? The spies that moved all the way back then. When they sent was it 10 spies? 12 spies?
12 spies went in.
Yes, sent 12 spies, and 10 came back with this negative response. Maybe you can help kind of recap that story real quick, and then we can get into it.
Well, Moses sent in 12 spies, and 2 of the 12 were Joshua and Caleb.
Right.
And so the other 10 came back and said, this isn't a land of abundance for sure. Yeah. But there's no way we can conquer. Yeah. They will defeat us. And of course, Joshua and Caleb tried to squash that, say, no, we are well able. God will make us able. Yeah. And so we know the results of that. That's what continued the wandering until all of those people had died off, and the only ones that survived were Joshua and Caleb.
Do you know how early that was into the world? Like, do you know if it says anything about like how long ago that was?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what it is, but it definitely was a period of time.
Right, and it's crazy to think that those. First of all, that I think that can teach us as well. Like, if God says that this thing is yours, and God says that He has this life for you, like, believe in that. Yes. Believe in what He has for you. Believe in, this promise that like believing that the promised land is a promise from him, and that taking that step for sure on your own makes no sense, right? Like the other spies, like there's giants in there. We ain't got none of this, And Joshua and Caleb like, no, like let's rally, let's go. And like you said, that prolonged their walking in the wilderness, I think so many times for us that can happen, right? We can prolong our walking in the wilderness too in the same way, because of us not being able to see that.
Yeah. Their complaining was evident, and that showed their lack of faith, and they that's what kept them from going in. Pastor Kevin shared the story many a times about, obviously a lot of people watching this may not know, but this building is actually a dome.
Yeah.
And he was responsible for cleaning the dome many a times. And Pastor would say, Kevin, it's about time to clean the dome again.
Yeah.
Well, when I got hired here, one of my first jobs, I'd only been here like 3 weeks, was to go and clean the dome.
Yeah.
And so Kevin and I did that project. He got me started on it, and I did the rest of it. And then a year later, we sure enough had to do it again. And he was like, how many more times am I going to be able to do it? And that time we had to clean it and we had to paint it.
Yeah.
And this is a big dome. It was like 350 gallons of paint we had to put on this dome.
Wow.
And he said that God dealt with him and said, until you can do this without complaining, without murmuring or complaining or anything like that, you're going to keep going around. He said it's almost like going around a mountain again.
Yeah.
He said when he finally got past that, he moved on from there. Kind of like the same thing. The children of Israel were murmuring and complaining and weren't trusting God. So they had to keep going around. And once that was done, which unfortunately that was all of those people dying off, then they were ready to move to the point of stepping into the promised land.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a lot of, obviously, how you said at the beginning is that like we can look at the children of Israel and go, come on, like all you had to do, but then you look at our lives and you go, well, I'm sure somebody's looking at us and be like, come on, all you got to do is this, and step into what God has for you and like truthfully believe that, this, whatever our promised land is, like is promised to us, and that if we can walk and learn our lesson, right? I think that's a big part. We've been talking about like this wilderness was a preparing season, and the wilderness isn't an accident, right? Like it's not an accident that they wandered for 40 years. Like it may have been a consequence to an action of not believing it or the revelation or trying to step into what God's trying to explain to them. But really it is a preparation season, right? And it's the season to get you ready to prepare. I even think of the story of David, right? David being able to protect his sheep, right? And what he had to learn, right? He had to learn, I think, I don't want to mix it up with the Wizard of Oz, but it was a bear and a lion. Maybe was the story?
It was a lion and a bear.
A lion and a bear, right? Being able to like fight these things off. Why? Well, though that prepared him for Goliath. Yes. And so that was and what's funny is that you can take his perspective in that and be like, man, like I was anointed to be king, and I'm like still out here in the fields, being a shepherd, right? And he could see that as a wasteful time, and a time that is preparing him. But him being able to step in and believe in that time, first of all, the timeline isn't his to own in the first place, it's God's, but also it is a preparation season. If he can get a hold of that, then he can be able to use that as a time to learn, not a time to, murmur and complain and do those things, And I think that when we're talking about, the spies and the children of Israel wandering through the wilderness for 40 years, like unfortunately it was necessary that they had to go for that long. It wasn't the cruelty of God, but actually the grace of God that he didn't let them go into the promised land unprepared, because I think it's like an 11-day trip, the actual trip of how they would travel from Egypt to the promised land. It's 11 days. And it took them 40 years, right? Is it because, and I think a lot of times we can think of that in our lives too, like, we can mistake the grace of God for the cruelty of God, wandering in those seasons. There could be some times where we are like, man, like I can see from A to B, like I can see over there. Yes. Why is it not my time yet? Why is it not my, why is this thing that's promised to me not promised me? What's some good thinking and some good things that we can learn that can help us with that mindset right there.
Well, obviously for the children of Israel, there had to be a period of unlearning and then relearning.
Right.
There was a lot of stuff they had to unlearn. You try to think about what was their mindset coming out of Egypt. Yes, I'm sure that they were thrilled that they were finally delivered after generations being there. But there had to have been a mentality that was burned into their minds that they had to unlearn.
Yeah.
And then learn what God was trying to teach them. So they needed that period of time there.
Yeah.
And obviously it took longer than it should have. But there was still, and Pastor Steph talked about this in her messages, it was that mindset that had to change.
Yeah.
That they had to understand what it was like to walk in freedom and not in slavery. Yes, they were still nomads, but they were walking in freedom.
Right.
They were no longer oppressed.
Right.
They had to learn what that was like. How do you live in that? How do you operate in that? And so those kind of things had to happen. And just learning to trust God in a different way.
Yeah.
Their trust changed from, our master's going to take care of us, to now when we wake up in the morning, go outside, our tent, is the cloud still there and is there manna on the ground?
Right. And
just learning to trust him in that way. So it was just so much that they had to learn, and just unfortunately it took so long for them to do that. But same thing with us. There's times that you look back on something and it's like, why did it take me so long to finally learn or listen to what God was trying to show me? We're no different. Yeah. And we've all had those why me, God moments, just like I'm sure they did.
Right.
We've had them countless times throughout our lives.
Yeah, for sure. That thank God for unanswered prayers, you know, because like the unanswered prayer, I would say for the children of Israel is that we teleport from Egypt into Israel. I mean, into, the promised land, right?
Yeah.
That's a prayer. I'm sure a lot of them are like, Lord, please don't let me walk around again,
Yeah.
But if they have the mindset of, and a history of like taking to oppression, right? Not being able to understand the idea of freedom and walking and living in freedom. Like, I don't want to go out on a limb here and say this would happen, but like, there could be a real possibility that as soon as they move, they just move oppressors, right? They instead of having the oppressors of Egypt, it's the oppressors of whoever was living in the promised land.
Yeah.
And they have these, and like I said, like they were giants, right? They were, so like if you don't have the faith, if you don't have the relationship with Jesus, then you're just you could just move from oppressor to oppressor, and thank God that God's grace was able to like have them walk through the wilderness. And like, like we said, like it of course, does it stink that entire generation had to pass? Like for sure. But it would have stopped with them if they didn't, if they would have moved with that generation straight to the promised land, that the children of Israel would have stopped with that generation, and God's like, no, I want this to be, a forever thing, a legacy thing. And it only can start if, this mindset, this generational curse is really broken, as far as being in this oppressed mindset, so with those spies, I love the parallel that you made of the story of the spies, the spies that was sent, that Joshua was a part of, and then the spies that Joshua sent. Maybe talk about that for a second on how because you said you're a numbers guy, so the way that worked out.
Well, he was a part of what's going, obviously the first spies going in, and they come back with a good report, and we know how that turned out. Yeah. So he's got to send in 2 more spies. It's interesting. It didn't even say who the spies were or what tribes they were from.
Right.
But he sent them in. It's like, why did he just send 2 this time and not 12? They still had a whole land to conquer. So this is obviously just my perspective. So take it for what it is. But maybe he was trying to cut the odds a little bit. It's like, hey, we don't need 12 negative voices coming back.
Right.
In a way, it's funny, but in a way, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Why would you rather have 12 negative voices come back, or 10 out of 12?
Right.
It's like these 2 guys come back. It could be that they both say no, or one says yes and one says no. We're playing the odds here that it's going to already be better than it was with those.
Yes.
And So obviously the two that he sent came back and were totally confident that we are prepared to go in and take Jericho. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a lesson of sometimes there's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that's true, you know. I love that, just almost like it's a practical of learning from, you know, but I'm sure there's some deeper, there's a deeper message in that too, you know, like how many times are we going to rely on the mass number of people, you know what I mean, where we can like really like, you know, take the people that are faithful and get that response. So I just love that parallel of Joshua being like, you know what, like I was a part of this crew, you know, I'm gonna instead of sending, you know, a Joshua, Caleb, and Mark, and a Joe, and a yada yada yada, I'm just gonna find a Joshua and a Caleb. I'm gonna send both of them, you know, and then they got the good response, right?
Yes,
they got the response of like both of them were like 100%. Yes, it's time, you know.
Well, there's so many times that negativity is contagious.
Yeah,
maybe one or two of those guys thought, you know, we're not gonna be able to do this, but those bad voices could have started spreading by the time they get back. Hey, 10 out of 12 say no on this thing.
Yes.
Who knows what that was? And I'm sure that he was understanding of that. I mean, he was obviously an anointed leader by that time. He had been anointed by God to take Moses' place. So, I just thought that was interesting that he only did those two.
Right.
Because it certainly cuts down your chance of people saying, no, we are not going to be able to conquer.
I think the phrase is a few bad apples spoil the punch, you know, and that's true. Yeah, I think that's a good point too. Like, figuring out that like who you surround yourself with, right, and who you are taking counsel from, you know what I mean? Because really, like in the way that you know, Joshua was in that position, and in the way that he set up people to be in that position, he was really relying on their counsel as far as what they're saying there, you know. So like, what are the you know, are we going to be able to rely on the counsel? And then, like I said, I know this isn't the main subject of the message, but it is a nice side point of being like, that negativity can spread, you know, having people that are like-minded and can have a positive effect on what you're on them in a right source of what they're getting their information from, you know. So that's good. I want to go into, I know we didn't really dive into it that much on Sunday, but the Rahab story, you know, leaning into that and that piece of it. What is the kind of a good synopsis of that story?
Well, whenever they first get into the promised land, once they come into the city, they meet Rahab. And so that news of the Israelites had already spread into the city. They knew that they were coming. They had heard about their exploits before that, because they had already had battles in Bashan and another place. And they had conquered those kingdoms. And so she said, come into my house, I'm going to protect you, because people were coming to look for them. So obviously she had an understanding of what was coming for their city. So she hid them until she was able to send them on to safety. And she said, now that I've done that for you, promise me that you're going to protect me and my house. And they said, anybody that comes into your house is going to be under the protection of your household. And we will bring you in with the children of Israel. And so she had to be a woman of faith already to believe that God was greater than who their God was. You know, the God of the people of Jericho. To trust enough that they were going to be able to come in and conquer, because it was a fortified city. And to risk her life to be able to protect those spies. And obviously it saved her family. Her family was able to go on, their lineage carried on. I talked a little bit about the story because I'd read this somewhere, excuse me, sometime, that her family's lineage was part of the tribe of Judah. So it went directly down all the way to Jesus.
Crazy.
That's wild. What a promise you get from obeying God in that situation she was in and saying, I'm going to protect you if you're going to protect me. And so she inherited the promise like the rest of them.
And so, you know, it's not a mistake that's like a story, like a side story, you know, that in this whole, march that the Israelites are making to be able to, you know, conquer and take the promised land, like that's a piece of it,
That's an essential piece.
And I guess from me asking you, why do you think that a story like that was included, and how can the message of that story, kind of tie into what the Israelites are going through?
I think it's maybe something that, yes, they were given an inheritance and a promise, and she was somebody that was able to recognize, wait, there's somebody that is great, that has a promise, and I want to inherit that, and not where I'm at right now. Mm-hmm. Because where I'm at in a few days, there'll be no inheritance at all.
Yeah.
And she wanted to be a part of what they had, and she trusted in the provider of that promise enough to know that she could have it.
Yeah, it's almost like, maybe I'm stretching here, but it's almost like that post-resurrection mindset of like, no, for everyone. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just for, the children of Israel, right?
Yes.
Like, you recognize, it's what they tried to have. They had to convince, the people after Jesus of being like, no, Jew and Gentile.
Yes.
Right. And it's the same for this of just like you said, I think recognizing that inheritance and that God is the one and true God, like that. Now she's blessed and now she has a promise. I think that's cool because that's even like it's like a peek into the future, right? So many years down the line.
Yeah, just think of Paul's mission. After Paul's conversion from Saul, that was basically the mission that God gave him is, now you need to bring my gospel to the Gentiles to show them that this is what my son did is for everyone. Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely a parallel.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, a lot of this is still that like there's still a lot of things in battle, obviously, because the wilderness was a prepared season, but there's so many things in battle of this different mindset that they learned from the wilderness, being able to wait on, be able to listen to God when he said it's time to move, be able to wait on God's timing and be able to stop when God says stop, like a lot of that just following his voice, And for us today, it's not a cloud, it's not a pillar of fire, but it's, it's on the inside of us and it's being able to know and like seek that out.
Yes.
Because for the children of Israel, one thing for them is that it was visible. The way they seeked it out was open the tent and look out and see. Yeah. But for us, it's we have to seek that out and listen to his voice and like and know his voice. I want to talk about kind of the memorial piece of this because nowadays we put up statues or we put up things like that, but like this whole grab a stone, right? Grab a couple stones, grab these stones, right? That, how many times that happened in the Old Testament? How many times do we get to see God say, I want you to build a memorial here so that people don't forget, right? What's the significance of that?
Well, of course, a memorial a memorial for anything is to cause us to remember, right? For some reason or another, whether it was the significance of it, good or bad. It could have been a tragedy that took place. It could have been a big victory, whatever it is. The memorial's there is for people to see it and it to remind them of what that is. Right. And so he was wanting to do the same thing with the children of Israel. Just long story short, some of the children of Israel wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan, inherit that area. And he said, yes, you can do that. You just have to help your brothers go in, take possession of that land, and then I'll allow you to move back. And so this was going to be a memorial for them. And I really think for anybody else to know the significance of what was happening, but it's really for the children of Israel. And I think it was interesting that, I don't know how I didn't see this before, but whenever I was reading that scripture and he talked about grabbing a stone out of the middle of the Jordan that was big enough they had to carry it on their shoulder. It's like, how did I not see that before, that it was something they had to carry on their shoulder? And I was thinking about it. We went to a national park a few weeks ago, and I took a picture of this one place where people were taking stones, kind of looked over this little ledge there, and they were taking stones and they would just stack them up in these, as much as they could. So you would see them, but lots of times they were 6 inches tall, maybe up to about 18 inches tall. So a small thing. And here he was telling them, I don't want you grabbing a pebble so that you make a memorial that's little like this and is easily washed away or kicked over or something. He said, I want each tribe to grab a stone that's big enough so when you put all 12 of them together, you can tell that it was put there intentionally. Yeah. And he said, I want you to do that, and that will be the reminder to you and anybody else for generations to come. So even in the next generation that's not even there yet, If they go by and say, hey, Dad, what is that?
Yeah.
They can tell the story of this is what God did for us.
Yeah.
And so it would be there as another way, a visible reminder of what he had already done, what he was in the middle of doing. They were in the middle of crossing the Jordan.
Yeah.
God stopped the water from coming upstream, allowed to turn to dry land so they could walk across. So they were in the middle of a miracle.
Yeah.
And then they were about to experience a multitude of miracles in the days and weeks and months to come as they conquered the land.
Yeah.
And so this was a reminder to them of what happened, what was happening, and what was going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's so good. You know, like I just love that idea. And I think that, you know, having something significant where that scenario can play. Dad, what is that? And you go, oh man, you got some time? I need to tell you
Let
about
me tell you a
this.
story.
Yes. And first of all, I say you do that great. I think you tell stories. I love anytime I come and sit next to you and I'm just like, hey, so what's the deal with the ceiling right here? And you're like, okay, yeah. So, and then you have
In
a story.
1982, we...
You know, you do a great job of that. I guess now for us, what does it look like for us? You know, for us that aren't gifted in sculpture building or, you know, bronze statues and things like that. What can a memorial look like for us nowadays to remind the next generation, the generations that follow?
It could, lots of times for us, it may just be our way of commemorating an event. Let's take the church, for example. We just had our 50th anniversary service. Obviously, we didn't put a statue up for that or a pile of stones, but we put things there as a reminder to people of what God had done in our church for the last 50 years. And, you know, we put pictures out. We had an amazing service that day. You guys did videos leading up to that with testimonies of people. A lot of that can come from even people's, for example, a testimony. A testimony is a spoken memorial of something.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, somebody could say, I can remember when God touched me in this certain service, and it could have been 30, 40 years before that. What were they doing? They're showing their memorial to somebody by their words.
Right, yeah.
And so those are things that we can do to remind people of, look, God did this for me and I want to remember it, but he can do something for you too.
Yeah, and I think that phrasing of like, we're just one generation away from things like that being forgotten.
Yes.
You know, when we choose to not share, you know, and I think it's just that verse of like, you know, we testify, you know, I mean, or we, the power is, you know, in the blood of the Lamb and the word of the testimony, you know, and like sharing those, like sharing the story of Jesus, right? But also sharing the story of what Jesus did for you, making it personal so that people can see these aren't just words on a page. This is something that I've lived, you know, and I can live through this. And so, yeah, for them at that time, of course they were sharing, but they also, you know, God was like, I want you to make this, you know, and first of all, just the significance of them leaving Egypt and crossing, you know, the Red Sea, right? Them crossing the Red Sea, right? And water being split, right? And then the same happening with the Jordan, right? Like even like God's so cool the way he does things like that. You know, this spreading of water so they can walk across both ways. Like that's awesome. That's like a bookend, almost like a bookend on the wilderness chapter, you know? And being able to, you know, take that and remember that. You said something about crossing the Jordan, and maybe this might not be a thing, but that is interesting. I think that's interesting about like some wanted to seize this one side of the land, and they go, yeah, you can, but also help your brothers on this side, you know? Why do you think that is? I mean, that's random. Why do you think that is?
Why do you think they wanted the other side of the Jordan?
Why do you think they wanted the other side, and why do you think that it was like allowed, you know?
They had just, I guess they had liked what, you know, they've conquered that area. And I think they just liked what the land looked like to them. Yeah. And so they were content with just settling on that side, which there may be something to that even. Right. But they went to Moses about it, and he asked God, and God said they can do that on the condition of that they still help the other ones inherit their promise. And so sure enough, they did that, and until when everything was conquered, then they were allowed to go back and settle that land. It
almost makes me think that it's like this God has more for you, you know, like sure, if you want this version of your life, you know, Like, I know that's not significant, but it can be.
There is something to be said about that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody's going to have a sermon sometime. You could definitely have a sermon out of that one.
Yeah,
for sure.
it's like, well, can we do this? Like, this is good enough.
Yes.
And then God goes, it's your life. You know, free will, right? Just know I have more for you. Just just know there's other, you know, and maybe he's like, just know there's some on the other side. So why don't you go help your brother and you go see? Because I bet you there's a lot of people that were like, can we conquer this side? And he's like, yeah, sure. Go with them. And they get to the other side and they go, oh, thank God I helped them out because now I can see God had so much more for us.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's like a nice little small, I mean, there's so many, right? The Bible just has a million of these.
It's rich with it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. One of the last things I want to talk about is, and I love this so much, and I don't know, even when you were sharing it, like, made me like kind of emotional, but like, I think it's when they crossed the Jordan that the manna dried up, right? Was it when they crossed the Jordan?
Yes.
The manna and what they were being sustained by, what they were, what God was feeding them, the food, right, that they had, that was no longer going to cut it for this next season.
Yes.
Right?
Once they had experienced the abundance of the land is how some translations put it, which there was an abundance. That's why it was promised land for them. That yes, God stopped the old way of providing for them because it was no longer necessary.
Yeah. I mean, whew, that's so good. And like we said, that's rich. You know, that's crazy. Like, I love that so much because the food and the methods and the ways that got you here aren't going to get you to the next place. Right? And then we go, okay, so what? Like God changed. Like, God stays the same, but he's asking more from you now.
Yes.
He's asking more trust from you now, you know? God, and I think you said, maybe I hope I wrote it down. God wants you to have trust in him, not a method. Ooh, that's good. That's so good right there.
Yes, he was, when I was talking about it, you know, because we just kind of went through Joshua 1 through 5.
Yeah.
If you go into chapter 6, that's the Battle of Jericho, but there's just battle after battle throughout the book of Joshua. And their victories would always come in different ways, and they were unorthodox ways. They weren't things where they would use standard military tactics to defeat the enemy. And show, I really think that was God was trying to show them, look, I want you to continue to trust in me because I'm really the one that is your provision. Yeah. That I'm going to take care of you, but I need you to trust in me while you're doing that. So, like you said a minute ago, their faith in the wilderness was you look out your tent and you see the clouds there. Okay, the clouds there today, we're staying. Yeah. And then you look around and you gather up your manna off the ground. Now you're not going outside and looking like that. It's like, okay, what are we doing today? What is God going to ask us to do today to continue to advance and take possession of the land that God has for us? So it's not so much that tangible thing anymore. Yeah. It's just trusting in him that whatever he tells us to do today, we're going to be able to do it. Whatever battle it is that we're going into, he is the one that's he's going to bring us the victory, not just us by ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I just love that so much because, you know, if you keep on getting something through one sort of method, you start believing in what that is. For example, this is just a personal thing in my life. I've needed help. I needed help with some things to be fixed on my car and in my vehicle over the years, plenty of times, right? But if every single time I take it to this one place, and then let's say, for example, somebody goes, "Hey, like, I feel like God told me to pay for this place, but to pay for your vehicle to be fixed," you know? If in my mind I can go, well, okay, next time my car gets fixed, I'm just gonna go take it here, and that same thing's gonna happen. You know what I mean? But God doesn't want you to trust in that. It's never like a I wanna be mindful what I'm saying here because it's never like A plus B equals C each time, you know? Like trusting in God I mean, even you know, talk about your lifespan and how long, and, you know, the experiences you've had over the years, right? Like, how many times did God help you with a similar problem in the same way?
Yeah, it's not very often. You know, you can't, he didn't want us to rely on the method or the formula for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really because I think as humans, we love to simplify it as much as we can.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. We love to be able to go, okay, well, you know, everyone tries to do that. You know, you think of in the business world, everyone's trying to streamline efficiency, right? you do this and this and this and this and this, and you do the same things every day, and you're, you know, I'm thinking there's so many different movies where they repeat this. You know, I think of like Fight Club, where he like goes every single day, and you know, it's like the, you know, the lighting of how all those things go, and you repeat the same thing every single day, and that's how it goes. But God's like, no, like there's even Pastor Jeff always talks about the heavenly adventure that he has for you.
Yes.
You know, are you putting yourself in position to say yes to all these different ways that God wants to further you and grow you and also provide for you, you know, like trusting in God and as your provider isn't trusting in a steady, simple, easy to see lifestyle. Right? It's like, it's crazy, you know, and God showed up so many, I mean, groceries on the doorstep. You know, all these miracles that God can do in your life, like they don't show up the same way every time. And they never show up the way that we think they're going to show up.
Yeah.
You know,
well, that keeps you on your toes, keeps you trusting in him for sure.
Yeah.
And every time that happens, it's just another thing to build your faith.
Yeah.
You know, I can imagine with the Israelites going in and conquering Jericho. Yes, he told them what to do, but I'm sure in the middle of that, there were probably a lot of them that's like, this is crazy. This is never going to work.
Yeah.
And then they see him do that. That strengthens their faith for the next battle. He comes in and does it a different way. So that makes them to realize that this is not possible without him. And they trust in him even more.
Yeah. So good. Now, before I end the podcast, is there anything else that you wanted to add onto the message you feel like you didn't get to? Did you want to redeem your date, your D-Day date?
Oh, I need to redeem my I am embarrassed, and I'm surprised that somebody didn't catch me. Considering myself a student of history, it was pointed out to me by my wife that I said D-Day commenced on January the 6th, 1944. It's June the 6th, 1944. I am very embarrassed that I said that wrong because I definitely consider myself a student of history. So for those of you that were there or those of you that go back and watch it, this is my redemption. I apologize for it. That is quite the error on such a significant date.
Well, listen, that's what the podcast is for, you know?
Go back and clean it up.
Exactly, you know? Or either you do the podcast or you do next week's offering and you go, hey, real quick.
Yeah. Before you bring your resources to God, we're going to talk about this date here.
Clean this up, yeah. So anyways, I wanted to give you that. I know even... You know, Shauna came in, she's like, he's going to say one thing on the podcast and he's going to clean this up. I'm like, I want to give you that opportunity.
Thanks for giving me that door. I feel better about myself now. That's, I'm glad, for one thing, I'm glad she even caught it because then it would have just gone out there with no chance to redeem.
Yes, for sure. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us, Pastor Rod. I appreciate you. If you guys, you know, if you haven't seen the message, of course, I want you to go dive into that. And dive in, like I said, to this series that we've been in. The message starts with, or the series has kind of started with, it's time to move. This is the 8th message, I would say. So 8 messages back. You know, if you guys want to go down this wilderness series with us, that's where you can go check it out on our YouTube and, of course, on our podcast platform. So we appreciate you guys. Pastor Rod, thank you for 30th episode. Let's do it.
It's awesome.
Yes, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. If you want to check out full messages, you can find us at LS Church on all podcast platforms. And you can watch full services with worship at LS Church Alvin on YouTube.